Ho home, here we go again. And it is another edition of Picks and Roll, heard right here on The Gambler. Sean Brace and Sean Barnard coming your way, talking all things NBA playoffs with a focus on the 76ers coming up short again in a pressure-packed playoff moment. We got a lot to discuss. Sean, today is a special day. It is my birthday. Having a beautiful start to this wonderful day. Gorgeous day outside, sunshine. Ran a little bit, had a good meeting this morning. But man, the Sixers, leaving that just tough cloud of another loss still floating around the following day. It's just, it's going to be a little while to get over this one. But man, looking forward to this conversation. How we doing today?
Yeah, doing better than I think I probably would have expected given the circumstances that obviously down 3-1's tough. And these have all been winnable games, which makes it all the more frustrating. But the reality is the reality that the Sixers team, we'll see how much fight they have left on them when they unfortunately have to take the floor again tomorrow. But it's been ugly. This is one that doesn't sit great. And ultimately, a lot to chop up about it.
Yes, yeah, you're right about that. The funeral will be held tomorrow at Madison Square Garden. Please don't win. Please don't win. Don't
I think they
win. And
will too.
I love Maxey and like that's where my mind goes. And of course JoJo fighting and just being who he is. But I don't win. I want the season to end. I want it over. And that's where we're at right now. So let's get to it. Okay. A lot to discuss from yesterday's loss. First of all, 97-92, Sixers 5-point favorites. And it was a do or die game because essentially 3 games to 1, as Sean pointed out. But you had an opportunity to tie things up like the Clippers did in Dallas, and the Sixers came up just completely small in that second half, specifically in the fourth quarter. I was shocked to look back at the box score and see them score 27 in that third quarter. But there was a point in that game where they were up double digits. I think they were up double digits twice, but in the third quarter specifically. And I said to the people that I was watching the game with, like, this is where the good teams that actually have that extra, gear in them, and potentially could be a team that make a run at possibly winning a Western or an Eastern Conference Finals. This is a team. This is the moment that they will show us who they are, and unfortunately, they did. And this Sixers team came out really small in those spots. And I like, to me, if we're pulling out the pie, right? Because people want blood. I get it. Again, I think when we talk about the 76ers, it's, people have their own takes and they take it where they want. So I'm not here to judge anybody's take at all. But for me, the pie, even though he is playing with Bell's palsy and of course, on one leg, you need more from your big time player in the fourth quarter. And I don't care if he's 300 pounds. I don't care if he's on one leg. He is the MVP. He is the go-to. It's too soon to expect that from Tyrese Maxey. Shots weren't falling for him. Somebody's got to step up. He's the only guy that I look to, and he came up really small in that fourth quarter. As a whole team, plenty of pie to go around for everybody. Yeah. But that was really frustrating from my standpoint to sit there. And, oh, by the way, just get peppered with text messages from our good friend Tom Bogert going, dude, like Batum's taking shots. Like, come on, man. Lowry's pulling up from downtown. This has got to be JoJo's game here. And he's right. And again, the pie going around, Nick Nurse, plenty of pie for you to step up and eat. Tyrese Maxey, shots weren't falling. This is it's playoff basketball. If you don't hit the shots, you're going home. Sixers did not. They couldn't find a shot in that fourth quarter, but just plenty of pie to go around. But unfortunately, I look at JoJo and I say he came up small in a fourth quarter spot.
Yeah, I mean, he was not good. It was not a Joel Embiid classic performance, which we have seen already this series. I would have obviously liked him to be better. He's not at the top of my pie chart, and all these conversations are tied together. I put probably the biggest majority of the blame on Nick Nurse, and largely connected to the Joel Embiid conversation. Joel played the entire second half in that game for the first time in his entire NBA career. That just can't happen with a 60%, if that, version of Joel. And like the conversation here, he did not look like he had legs down the stretch. It's a separate conversation to talk about the fitness, the knee injury, all these things. But the bottom line is that's one of these buttons or tactics that coaches tend to go to come playoffs. We're seeing it from Tom Thibodeau on clear display of just best players more. Josh Hart has played 48 minutes in a couple games in this series. Joel Embiid's not a guy that applies to. Like, he's simply just not a guy that you can extend to that. And I thought it was a mistake. And I get like this is a damned if you do, damned if you don't, that if you take him off the floor and all of a sudden the Knicks go on an 8-0 run, that game's probably over as well. So we are kind of splitting hairs here. But I do think that tied right into Embiid not having it down the stretch. And I think it would have been more valuable to this Sixers team to give him a quick 3-minute break and then throw him back in there where he does have something. I also will give some credit to the Knicks and the adjustments that they made. They were doubling off the dribble instead of off the touch, which was the case. Embiid proved that he can pick a team apart when you send the doubles that early on in the season. Now it was wait a second until he starts to get into his shot, then throw the double, which is a more difficult play to pass out to. Also, from the Nick Nurse side of things, thought he overcorrected in the Jalen Brunson stuff significantly. That in the first two games, it was clear the focus was, we're forcing the other guys to beat us. We're not letting Jalen Brunson be the guy that picks us apart. And ultimately, guys like Josh Hart stepped up and got that done. Then games 3 and 4 felt like things switched, that it was, okay, we'll let Brunson get his, we'll let him get to his spots, but we're not allowing these other guys to step up. And I get, again, like the results are the results. We very well could be talking this as a 2-2 series where I'm not being as critical right now, but I do think he overcorrected to an extent. I don't think that he stuck with what was working, even though the results weren't showing it. So, and there also was not like a creativity that he showed at any point. There was no, let's go to this small ball lineup. Let's run with Ricky Council. Let's run with KJ Martin for a couple minutes to up the tempo of this game. It was just kind of trying the same stuff, and very disappointing that I thought that would be a difference maker for this Sixers team, and ultimately feel pretty unsatisfied by the Nick Nurse performance.
Right there with you. Yeah, Nick Nurse at the top, screaming at the top of my lungs, in the fourth quarter, like, do something, figure something out, try something. The Knicks were all over the Sixers in that fourth quarter. And, unfortunate, the one that's going to stick with me for a long time is the pass. Joel Embiid pulls up from 3 and it gets put fifth row, and like at that point in time, you knew, and it came down, it was tighter. Don't get me wrong. But like when that ball got put into the fifth row, I go, they're going to lose this game. And it just felt like, man, that was a game, a very winnable game, of course, having a double-digit lead. But, these things have a way of working themselves out. And the Knicks, like you said as well, they deserve a ton of credit. They're not involved in the pie, though. You can't put them in the pie. The pie is for only Sixers related. But
yeah,
you're right. The Knicks balled and defensively wanted it more again down low. They were all over the glass, not as efficient. They were pretty terrible. Both teams were pretty bad from downtown. That's why another reason why that was an extremely winnable game. And the Sixers had no answer for Brunson. Jalen Brunson, I don't know one person. I saw JJ Redick asking the question, is he a top 10 player? Going into these playoffs, if Jalen Brunson wasn't a top 10 player already going into these playoffs, you weren't watching.
Yeah.
So I don't know why JJ asked that question today. Was it an old podcast? I don't know. I saw that on my timeline. Jalen Brunson is one of the top 10 players in the game this year.
Yeah.
Very well could have gotten MVP votes. I don't know. We don't know who won it yet.
Probably will get votes.
He deserves it. He deserves MVP votes. They were a 2 seed. He's phenomenal. Yesterday made me like him even more. Taking a shot, going out there. It didn't matter. He's going right up against Joel Embiid multiple times from the free throw line, finding a way to put the ball over. And you know what? They needed that performance where he shot the ball 34 times to win the game because nobody else was getting a bucket for them. Nobody else was producing for them. And I thought Brunson deserves, like, that's unfortunately where my mind goes, Sean. It's like, all right, Brunson understood the assignment in the fourth quarter. It's either him or this team isn't winning. Joel had to do that. And he was out there. Get that ball to him. Demand the ball on the block. Get down low. And I get it. He's on one leg. We find ourselves excuse after excuse after excuse, whether it's reality or not. But we make these excuses up for Joel Embiid. On the flip side, Jalen Brunson, who rolled his ankle at the end of that first half, goes back out there, understands the assignment, and says, we're either going to win or lose with me shooting the ball. And that's it. And if Joel Embiid demanded the ball down low on the block or whatever it was, or got off 15 shots in that fourth quarter, at least I can sit there and say, you know what? There was a little more to him in the fourth quarter. He had nothing left in the tank. He was completely gassed in that fourth quarter. And that's unfortunate.
And ties right into the rebounding conversation here that, like, that again is another reason why he should have had a break here. That the rebounding was maxified by Joel, who is not a great rebounder regardless. He's really not physically capable of jumping right now, and like all those effort things matter. I think that was a factor as well. And Nurse didn't have a counter there. I again would have thrown in the Paul Reed and Joel Embiid minutes just as a counter to help out on the boards, man. Like that is where this game was lost. That the Knicks had a 73% offensive rebounding rate in the minutes in which Isaiah Hartenstein was off the floor. So meaning in those situations, their tallest player was 6'8" and Precious Achua, and they a 73% offensive rebounding rate. You just can't win when that's the case. And it's as simple as that. I do think that this is a larger conversation from roster construction that you should know with Joel Embiid's strengths and weaknesses. You have to have a guy that is a good rebounder paired next to him. And that is not Tobias Harris, by the way. And while like these guys tried and gave effort, when you have a roster within Kyle Lowry and Tyrese Maxey each also on the floor, you're not winning a ton of rebound battles with either one of those guys who are each 6'3" and under. So like there's a lot to nitpick with all of it. The Joel stuff specifically, he gets himself in these tough spots. And it feels a little bit like the LeBron James conversation back many years ago, where if he did not make those passes and he's shooting through the double and triple teams, then we're complaining that he's not making the right basketball play. And the fact that he was, for the most part, moving the ball the way it was case, the Knicks basically challenged the Sixers and said, we just watched Joel carry this team to win, score 50. We're not letting that be the case. Let's have the other guys beat us. And they couldn't. That this much improved roster didn't look capable of doing that. Tobias Harris looked small once again, had 1 3-point attempt last night. That just can't happen. A guy like Kyle Lowry, like I don't want to throw too much blame on him because he is what he is at this point. He's 38 years old. A guy like Buddy Hield, who was the prize of the trade deadline, was straight up unplayable. Oubre was fine. I was okay with Oubre. And I do think Maxey, like, we got to get past this fun young story, up and coming player. Dude, it was your turn to take over. That if there was one of those bursts that Tyrese Maxey could have had, one of those 8 to 10 point periods where he hits back-to-back threes and beats a team on a fast break to give you this boost, they likely win the game if you just get that. He was unable to step up and do it. So there's a ton of places to place blame. This was a complete team loss, whether that makes you feel better or worse. But the bottom line is they just did not get the job done.
No, you're right. And it does make me feel worse when you bring up the Hartenstein fouling out and still getting dominated on the boards. As a matter of fact, that's when he fouled out, I texted Boger. I'm like, that's huge. Was it in the third quarter? Did he foul in the third quarter?
I believe so. He got 5 fouls in the third quarter. I don't think he ever officially fouled out. I think that they sat him after that 5 and then it was working. So they kept him off the floor, but drew all 5 fouls in the third.
That's funny because we were waving to him. You're right. He never did foul out. I assumed we were watching a game, obviously, in a party atmosphere. I assume that he fouled out. That's crazy. And I was like, no, I thought that was only 5. And everybody was waving to him.
Yeah.
Everybody was waving to him in the stands. And I'm like, all right, maybe he did foul out. Yeah, he never went back in. That's wild. Interesting stuff there. All right, maybe I have to read up a little bit more on what the hell took place in that fourth quarter with him not playing there. But because, damn, he's dominant. He's a guy that wants it. You know, you bring up the Paul Reed. Yeah, roster construction is at the top, and it's clearly not a good enough roster. We know that. Yeah. Paul Reed getting shoved out of the way by Josh Hart. Like, you gotta look yourself in the mirror, bro. And I'm not gonna sit here and say you're wrong for that. I just don't know what they would have gotten, because to me, Paul Reed is what Paul Reed is, but I thought he was a little bit better. And man, the want's not there, and Josh Hart made you look like you know what underneath in that lane. You got to check yourself, because for a guy who's got trademarks and supposed to be this fan favorite and all that, bro, you got to prove it. And he did not do that yesterday.
By the way, the Paul Reed conversation, we all remember the restricted free agency stuff that went down last year. The clause in his contract that was basically put in to challenge the Sixers to match it was that his contract only becomes guaranteed if the Sixers make it past the first round, or whichever team was to sign him. So the Jazz were basically signing him to a 1-year deal, forcing the Sixers to sign him to a 3-year deal. Well, not so fast, because the Sixers will not be making it past the first round if they lose to this Knicks team. And Paul Reed's looking down the barrel of free agency himself this year again, which was not expected to this point. So a series that mattered quite a bit to that guy. And I definitely think he had a higher stock price point last summer than he does right now. So he likely cost himself a decent bit of money too.
That is interesting stuff there. Yeah, we'll have plenty of time to talk about the roster construction and how you can figure this out and be better next year for the offseason. You know, just Nick Nurse and defensively, there was an answer for Jalen Brunson in the first couple of games, and we talked specifically about it when he went for 39 in that loss in game 3, and you said, "Hey, you know what? It's hard to keep a good man down, number 1. Number 2, oh, by the way, the switches from the Knicks perspective was now Brunson was able to pinpoint who he wants to go up against. The hell took place yesterday? And why was there no answer for him whatsoever? To the point that he's going up against Joel Embiid, who's got, I don't know, feet on him, feet.
Yeah.
And he still was making him and it never looked like a bad shot. Brunson is damn good. He's got that old school style to him. But how the hell can he go one-on-one versus Joel Embiid and still make that? Was that a conscious decision on Brunson? Like, ain't no one stopping me? Could Nick Nurse have done anything defensively? Because, yeah, get it. The points, the buckets weren't falling, but to essentially be fair about it, as I said, you look at the box score, threes weren't falling for either team. So
Yeah.
there were opportunities if the defense could have stepped up better. What the hell happened with Brunson, and why was there not more of an effective route challenging him on the defensive side of the ball?
Yeah, I mean, all these things are connected, and part of it is just Brunson did not play up to his standard through the first 2 games, shooting 29% from the field, that he was better than he had played to that point. I do think Nick Nurse overcorrected by allowing him to get to his spots more, by taking away some of these Dante DiVincenzo looks and the off-ball opportunities for others, that it did feel like the mindset shifted from we're not allowing Jalen Brunson to beat us and forcing the others to now let's give way and allow some of these tough contested mid-range twos in exchange for not giving them the open 3-pointers. And we can nitpick and argue over what the right decision is there. The results are the results, and we saw it. Brunson absolutely made it a conscious effort to get Embiid in space yesterday in a way that they haven't. And that was something that I expected to come from the Knicks side of things, because we know that Joel isn't moving laterally the way that he is when he's at his best, or the level that you would hope for. That one of his biggest appeals as a defender that we've seen throughout his career is that he is capable of switching out the guards on perimeter and locking them up. He can't quite move like that with a guy like Jalen Brunson, who's so efficient in those kind of quick twitch, getting downhill opportunities. And it is, you got to tip your hat to Brunson on some of those. The one that he hit over Embiid was absolute, like, you can't defend that any better from Joel's perspective. So it's not even like I want to be too hard on him there. But yeah, I mean, Brunson got going. He was fired up. It was clear that that game meant something, that you can feel the bad blood that has kind of stemmed and boiled over in the series. And he ultimately got the job done. So I do think it was not a great just overall outlook and scheme from Nick Nurse, specifically in yesterday's game. I am frustrated that this was the path that we went down, and frustrated the lack of creativity to switch things up on the fly, just having another card to go to, which Nick Nurse just didn't seem to have in his hand.
What happened to the one-on-one, though? And I know I'm making it way too easy here with the adjustments, but, like, I thought Oubre was that guy. I thought with the challenge was set out for him, and he met, the criteria to at least slow down and shut down Brunson in those first 2 games. Like, why did that not return in the second half like yesterday? Why was it just like, you know what? We got to wait. We got to get, all hands on deck here. What the hell happened? Why could we not go 1v1 versus Brunson yesterday with Oubre?
So kind of what the scheme was through games 1 and 2 is one of Kelly's best traits as a defender. He's very good at screen navigation, that he can get over and under screens, probably by far the best rate on the Sixers team. Brunson found a cool little counter in his own bag that, like, what Kelly was really doing is he was going over on screens on Brunson, which they still were. I believe he's blowing everyone else in the NBA as far as number of screens per game that he's receiving and fighting through. That's a good way that they create an advantage for him. So Kelly was doing a good job fighting over screens and beating Brunson to the spot. What the Knicks have kind of discovered, and what poked a hole in this, was Brunson started beating him off a crossover the second Kelly started to cheat, and then he does get the advantage back. So the Knicks were essentially pulling some double screens to get him downhill. And the other side of that is when you're beating the guy, you're either getting there in front to kind of cut off that valve, or when that turns to the counter where you're on a guy's back. The Sixers were doing a nice job having a next level. Typically, it was Joel Embiid kind of taking away this mid-range here. With the combination of like that needing to be connected, it ended way more in kind of Brunson and Embiid situations, which just wasn't a good look for the Sixers team. So some of this, to be honest, is more of a testament of Brunson figuring out how to create the advantage on Oubre in a way that it was not the case. And it definitely was less structured, having Oubre in a bit of like a box and one situation on Brunson, which I would have much preferred to continue to be the case. But he got his chances against Max. He got his chances against Lowry. And ultimately, the Sixers paid for it.
Hell of a game by that kid. Hell
Yeah.
of a game. He's got the championship mentality. That is a badass, man. And the Knicks are lucky to have a guy like Brunson suiting up for them. And regardless of how they were able to get him, he's playing for them. And we'll see what happens in the future. We'll see what happens in the future tomorrow night. Game 5 at Madison Square Garden, 4-point spread. Knicks favored at home, 203.5. I don't know. Yeah, I don't even care to discuss it. We got plenty of time to talk about that tomorrow. We'll be live for a funeral inside the Duncan Lounge. It was supposed to be camo night. Now it's just black. Tuesday, Duncan Lounge, Game 5, live, all that. All right, now let's get to the fans. And, man, they are ruthless. Those Knicks fans. That's some shit right there. Ooh, I cursed. That's some stuff that I've never seen before in Philadelphia. There have been plenty of fan bases that have come through here, but there's levels to it. Like the Mets fans took over Citizens Bank Park a couple years ago with that 7 line. And, it's not a playoff game, but it's a Saturday or Sunday afternoon, but still jarring to see crazy amounts of blue together and chanting all sorts of stuff. And, they were doing it to a point at Xfinity Live with that time, but not, like Rangers fans came down here and took over Wells Fargo Center with the Flyers being bad. There's levels to everything. And I've never seen anything like what took place yesterday with the couple hundred of them gathering inside the building, right by the escalator, right by the doors, chanting F Embiid. Like, as a Sixers fan, like putting the team to the side and who they are and what we've been through. Like, just as a Sixers fan, my loyalty goes years, decades. And that was painful. That was frustrating. And I even said it yesterday to my buddy, and it's a young man's game, but you better believe that if I was taking an escalator down, I don't know. I'm definitely saying something like, shut up. Am I ready to fight 200 people? No, it's a young man's game, but have some pride. There was none of that. Like, Sixers fans wanted no part of it, leaving the building. And the Knicks fans continue doing what they were doing. Again, chanting Joel F. Joel inside the arena just blows me away more than anything that's going to take place outside, putting jerseys on Wilt and stepping on jerseys outside, whatever. Like, the inside stuff just crushed me. And you know what? These types of things, what goes around comes around, right? Like, we've had our fun with Knicks fans. They were terrible for 5-6 years. They were a disaster. They never beat the Sixers.
Have made the finals. It's been longer since they've been to the finals or out of the second round since the Sixers, by the way.
It's funny when you think about that, but clearly on a better path right now with the roster that they have. And of course, we'll see what they were able to do in the next round. But man,
I still would disagree there, by the way. I still would disagree there.
What? That they're not getting to the second round?
No. That the Sixers are on a better pathway than this next team. I still feel that way.
Yeah, of course you do. I tried to tell you that they weren't the better team. You didn't want to hear that either.
Well,
the Knicks are the better team.
Well. They're not.
Knicks are the better. You can't be up 3-1 and tell me that they're not the better team.
They've played better. They've played better. They've out hustled the Sixers team. They're not the better team.
Sean, you even have to come over and say, you know what? You got to give it up to the team. They're going to win the series 4-1. 4-1.
I mean, maybe
they were the better team.
They out hustled this team. They out willed this team. They're not the better team. The Sixers are a more talented basketball team.
That's part of the game.
Wanted it more. Yeah,
that's
for sure.
Part of the game.
I don't mean this as a critique. And my original comment, I'm more from the long-term standpoint, is I still think that this Knicks team has a ceiling. When we look at the Sixers team, this was never an all-in year for the Sixers team. That all this appeal was this cap space.
all year in year for the Knicks.
As they're going to make another big move. I mean, I would say they're closer to that all-in push. Like, all Daryl Morey did from a move standpoint was make sure he's getting 1-year deals, that there is this max contract slot. There are all these additional first-round picks they can trade for this summer. That a lot of Daryl Morey's work has been undoing past mistakes. We're finally at that point. And while, like, I think this roster had a puncher's chance, I would not put this on the same level of like this was not an all-in with James Harden or an all-in with Ben Simmons. This was basically like, let's see if Tyrese Maxey can do it, and if this kind of group of random guys that we strung together and Frankenstein a complementary force can actually accomplish this. So from a
But
pathway perspective,
this is also post injury to JoJo. So if
correct.
JoJo doesn't get hurt, what song you singing then?
Well,
Like,
don't
because
forget,
to me, I think every year with Joel Embiid has to be an all-in year. Has to be, because look at what we've already wasted with loss to the Hawks, the not getting past the Raptors in that season. I would even say even more so to the Celtics last year. Like, Joel Embiid, he's on the back end of his career. We know it.
sure.
We know it. So this year was an all-in year for the Sixers versus the Knicks. I don't think it was. And the Knicks have been playing, they're the 2 seed. They've been playing great basketball all season. I'm not shocked at all to see the Knicks beat the Sixers the way that they have. I'm not at all.
I mean, the Sixers started the season with James Harden on roster. That they started with $35 million attached to this guy that was not suiting up and playing. And also, that's not even including Tobias Harris, who the Sixers would have been better for if he was holding out. And then when we're talking about, like, with James Harden here, there was real talk of, like, is this just a gap year of you let this all come off the books and figure it out? And then we saw Joel Embiid take his game to another level and be like, you can't do that. And Tyrese Maxey looking like he had a fighting chance to be this true number 2. The dude's still 23 years old. So, like, it's frustrating, but this wasn't a season from start to finish where there was this game plan. They kind of had Frankenstein themselves into it. They have enough talent that they should have been competing harder and should have won this series, absolutely. But it is like, this was a bizarre year when you think about, like, PJ Tucker started multiple games for the Sixers this year. That was this season that all happened.
Yeah.
So it's been just a weird year overall.
Well, I would say my answer to that would be the NBA as a whole is weird, right?
Yeah.
Like, every franchise has their ways. And another thing that when we talk about it and we just get things off our chest, you're right. Like, I look at what the Mavs and Clippers just did, right? Like, the Mavs were this close. I know that they were getting blown out, but they were this close to being up 3-1. This close. And then the Clippers were this close to being down 3-1.
Sixers
like,
should be 2-2.
I don't argue that. I still don't think that they're winning that series in 7 games with the game 7 with home court obviously being in New York. I would still give the edge to the Knicks. I think the Knicks are a better team because of everything. You throw the skill. Maybe I'll give more skill to the Sixers, but the health, the want, like everything, that the intricacies of a 7-game series, I'll say that the Knicks are a better team, and you and I will have to decide or to agree to disagree on that. That's fine.
I mean,
future. What team would you rather have as far as the future is concerned? I think this is an interesting one. I don't think it's full-fledged New York, but damn, man, like, you got to do a lot of convincing right now for me to believe that the Knicks or the Sixers have a better future than the New York Knicks.
this will be the first time in the Joel Embiid era that a roster is fully designed around him. That there's no Ben Simmons you're accounting for, no James Harden that you're finding players to complement, that you have to get PJ Tucker in here. That I do think Joel Embiid and Daryl Morey will sit in a room in a way that he has not ever had the opportunity to. Let's get players that fully optimize yourself. That I feel pretty good about that being the outlook. That is Joel Embiid, Tyrese Maxey, and Ricky Council IV as the only guys that are officially going to be on this roster, and that you pick the true guys that can help this team. That we've had so many players that are just poor fits on this roster over the year that I'm optimistic they can find something other than that. You're never going to get, nobody on that Knicks team is ever going to touch the top end talent of Joel Embiid. Tyrese Maxey, I still think, is in that same category as Jalen Brunson. I still stand by the take that he's closer to the Maxey mold than he is the Joel Embiid as far as impacting a team. And sure, all these guys, I mean, is a compliment that they're capable of going out there and winning their team again. But to kind of like tie things back to this whole like fan conversation and them taking over the arena, what I do think that the organization should take note of, and that this isn't just a throwaway that this happened. Yes, it's embarrassing that was the case. I can't believe that it is, but that isn't happening at a Phillies game. That isn't happening at an Eagles game. And the reason for that is that a good portion of the city has lost faith in the Sixers team, that there have been so many past failures that has stuck with it. And you can bring up the economics, how it's not a far trip, all these other things. The bottom line is, if the Sixers believed, if Sixers fans believed that this Sixers team was going to win, they would have been in that building. And Knicks fans believe that was the case, while Sixers fans believe this team was going to let them down. And ultimately, both things proved to be true there.
Yeah, no, you're right about that. Because, Sean, as a diehard as I am, I never had one vibe of going to a game. Just didn't. I did not have like, oh, I want to go see them play in person. Number one, financially, let's just
Yeah.
start there. It's expensive. It's expensive to buy playoff tickets. It's expensive to go to a game, to buy those beers and sit there and give yourself a full day of all that. Like I tuned in yesterday. I'm so happy I did not go to that game. I never thought about going to that game. And teach their own, right? Like it's a young man's game. If it was 10 years ago, absolutely I want to go to that game. I want the smoke. Even better when we're down 2-1 or whatever it may be. Like, let's go. But it's a young man's game. I had no issue staying home. Never thought for myself going to that game would have been a want at all. And thankfully it wasn't. Now, if you're telling me game 6, it's 3-2 or we're up 3-2, maybe I'm singing a different tune. But for the most part, it's not happening to these other teams. This city, every Sixer fan out there has been saying the same thing. Like you are one of the very few optimistic Sixer fans coming into this postseason run. Not saying you were wrong. It's just your vibes. It's who you were. You were one of very few out there that were singing the right tune. Unfortunately, things played out the way that they did, and the Sixers fell short yesterday. But we move on. We got a game tomorrow. Once again, it's a funeral. Wear black. We'll be live at the Dunkin' Lounge. You're not going to sit here and tell me they're winning tomorrow, are you?
I think they do just because it's the most Sixers thing ever. I don't think they win the series, but I do feel like they're just going to maybe just win one just so they can do it right in front of the home fans all over again. Something along those lines feels like a fitting ending to this to me.
All right. Yeah, I definitely don't want to see a game 6 where they clinch in Philadelphia. It's we'll have to declare a state of emergency with those Knicks fans coming down. They are absolutely ruthless. Anyways, we'll keep it moving. Anything else to get off your chest as far as Sixers are concerned?
Yeah, I
Any
mean,
out there? Anybody bother you on the timeline?
oh, of course, yeah. I knew that was coming. I knew that was running, and I expected it. Fair game all around. I do think like it
Absolutely.
is. This series is far closer than a 3-1 lead would indicate. That I think each of these games have been coin flips. But with that still being true, that decreases my optimism of them having any chance of winning 3 games in a row. So it's frustrating, kind of the way the cookie crumbled here with Tobias Harris. A little pun in there. But the bottom line is, it is what it is. They're down 3-1. You can argue it should be 2-2. It could have been 2-2 in a number of these games, but it is what it is. It sucks for the Sixers team.
Yep. Yes, it does. It sucks for Sixers fans.
Yeah.
The good
More
ones.
so. Yeah.
The good ones. All right. Let's keep it moving here. Sean Barnard with me, picks and roll / daily ticket. And keeping it moving as far as yesterday's games. We talked a little bit about it, but credit where credit is due. The Mavs or the Clippers went into Dallas and found a way to win that game, hold on to it after a 39-16 first quarter lead. A 39-16 first quarter lead. They blow it. Dallas actually had the lead, if I'm not mistaken. And then 116-111 was your final score. Man, Paul George is that difference maker. I'll tell you what, if there's an opportunity to bring him to Philadelphia, sign me up right here, right now. Is he the perfect player? No. But that's a dude that demands the ball in money times, and that step back 3 in the final seconds or final minute, whatever it was just gorgeous. He went for 33 yesterday. Credit to James Harden. I'm expecting James Harden not to show up in one of these games. Haven't watched that series in great detail, but he's performed pretty well, including yesterday. Another 30-point performance. I think that's his 5th team now in the NBA as far as playoffs are concerned. Well, OKC, Houston, Clippers, Sixers, and Brooklyn. Yeah, 5 teams he's had 30 points or more in a playoff game. I think that's the first time in NBA history, which is pretty cool there. And now it's a 2-2 series, which is a coin flip. I give the edge to the Dallas Mavericks, but again, Clippers now have home court. Your thoughts on yesterday's performance and that series moving forward?
Yeah, this has been probably one of my favorite series to watch, probably outside of the Sixers and Knicks. A cool clash of styles that both teams play a little bit similarly. It sucks the Kawhi Leonard stuff that it does not sound like there's much optimism there for moving forward. He gave it a shot. He did come back. He looked okay, but that's obviously severely limiting to this Clippers team ceiling if he can't show up on a night-to-night basis. You mentioned Paul George, and it was funny. I was seeing some of the slander of Paul George yesterday, how he scored 26 in the first half and then was kind of quiet in that second half. And which is one kind of the criticism and concerns when you have this Sixers conversation. But my brain went to, If there's any player not named Tyrese Maxey or Joel Embiid to drop 26 points and a half, the Sixers win that game. Like, it's as simple as that. Like, that's kind of the margins we're talking about there. I do give the Clippers a testament for fighting. I do give them credit there. This series, every game has been very close. Luka, while he still finished with 29, 10, and 10, I don't think it was one of his better games, as funny as that kind of is. So I think he's going to be better moving forward. I do think the Mavericks win this series when push comes to shove. But credit to James Harden and Paul George that they have mostly shown up. This is a fun series, one that I think will likely go 7. But I do think that the Mavericks do find a way to get it done.
Wow, Mavericks are minus 190, Clippers plus 160 to win this series. Why? That's such. You sound like it's a slam dunk for the Mavs there. Like I said, 2 out of the next 3 are in LA, and that's a flop. That's a lopsided number right there as far as Clippers are concerned. Interesting with that number. Any thoughts on that price?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Kawhi Leonard stuff is baked into there pretty significantly. That I don't expect him to step foot on the floor for the remainder of the series, and it will be interesting to see. It's a difficult conversation with Kawhi. For all the conversations that we can have about Joel, I think the Kawhi ones are even more difficult to put your finger on. That you just truly don't know his availability in the short term or long term. So I would think that's a part of it. But I am surprised it is that notable. But I do think Dallas wins that series. But this seems much more in kind of the pick'em lane to me.
All right. And just to let everybody know, Sixers right now are plus 650 to win their series. Knicks minus 1,000. All right. Let's keep it moving. Also from yesterday, break out the brooms. The T-Wolves. It's about damn time people start talking about them in a manner that they deserve, because that was impressive. 4-game sweep over Phoenix Suns, 122-116. I know everybody wants to make the case about what's next for the Phoenix Suns, and that's the bigger storyline as far as ESPN is concerned. For me, it's not. It's about the T-Wolves. It really is. And I don't think that they were getting enough love. This is a team that very well could have got the overall number 1 spot if Karl Anthony Towns was healthy. I still don't think that's a lock. But as far as a team that can go in and beat the Denver Nuggets in that next round, and I like, yeah, of course, Denver's going to be favored and everybody's going to pick Denver, but Ant's the difference. That's another guy that's just is like, dude, get out the way, get me the rock and watch what I can do. Taking on double teams doesn't matter. Finding the right player. Of course, getting help from other players out there. Karl Anthony Towns goes for 28 yesterday, 4-6 from downtown. McDaniels gave him 18, but make no bones about it. Ant is the deal. He's Edwards. Ant Edwards is the real deal. He is the engine for that squad, and he's the reason why I give them more than a puncher's chance against the Denver Nuggets in the next round. But really impressive for them to sweep the Phoenix Suns in desperation mode, games 3 and 4 on the road in Phoenix.
Yeah, Anthony Edwards, future face of the NBA, and it's becoming quicker rather than in the long term there. That, like, the way he goes about things, the energy that he brings, even his post-game stuff, the way that he answers questions, how entertaining he is, how unapologetically himself he is, you can't help but love the dude. And far as just like from a basketball perspective here, I do think that the power balance of the Timberwolves sort of fixed itself during when Karl Anthony Towns got hurt. That one of my concerns with this team was it was always just trying to make it all tie together in a way that satisfied Rudy Gobert, satisfied Karl Anthony Towns, still work with Anthony Edwards. I think when Cat got hurt, that it became, here are the keys, Anthony Edwards, take us home. And then bringing Karl Anthony Towns back, it's been still very clearly Anthony Edwards' team. So I think the power balance has kind of worked itself out in a way that was necessary to this team. He's absolutely deserving. He's ready, and he is that caliber of talent that can take this team, does it on both ends of the floor. And there are stretches where this Timberwolves defense straight up looks unbelievable. Like, McDaniels is another guy who's a huge part of it. Gobert, we know, the defensive player of the year most likely. So I do give this team a chance. I don't think they get swept by the Nuggets by any means. I think this is absolutely a series. And if Ant can start to do something like that, that's when he does truly climb into these different conversations for the very short list of players that he looks eye to eye in across this NBA.
We talked about it a lot last week before these games. Well, even 1 or 2 games into the series, and the numbers really didn't fluctuate all that much. That, when you break down the playoff path, it was the Denver Nuggets and the Minnesota Timberwolves in that next round. And there it is. Like, the number is the number. And that's why I said the value is there for the Minnesota Timberwolves, where, like, they're not going to meet up in the Western Conference. This is next round. And whoever wins that series is going to play in the NBA Finals. I don't care if it's Denver or Dallas or the Clippers, and of course OKC, which I think the world of. We know their shortcomings. They're not going to be able to fix that. The winner of the next series between the T-Wolves and the Nuggets will represent the West in the NBA Finals, and there's a chance that the Timberwolves could do that. They could beat the Denver Nuggets. It's going to take a lot. It's going to take a hell of basically another few games like Ant put on yesterday, which I think he's capable of, scoring 40 and being that guy. And of course, defensively, the Timberwolves being smarter than the Denver Nuggets. Again, I'm not sitting here that's saying that they will, but 5-1 to represent the West right now, I think that's a good number. Nuggets are minus 110. I won't hate you if you tell me you're going to take that. I think that's an okay number right now. But to win the West, to represent the West in the NBA Finals, 5-1 for the T-Wolves, I think that's a pretty good number right now. Would you lay anything on that, or would you be more partial to the Denver Nuggets minus 110?
I definitely give the Timberwolves more of a puncher's chance than I did initially going into these playoffs or really this year. That I do think that this leap by Anthony Edwards is legit. I do think he will be a guy who will outplay Jamal Murray in that series. I still have concerns. I mean, Jokic is Jokic, and he looks to be finding his lane. I definitely think there's value, and you won't get a better price right now if you want to jump on a Celtics Nuggets finals matchup. It wouldn't even surprise me if that was in the minus money at this point, but that's something. But I do think the Timberwolves are the best chance to get out the West. That I think the Jokic matchup will not fare well against the Thunder. So I guess it's second round or bust when looking at the Western Conference, kind of in my mind.
I got exact matchups for win or exact matchups results based on DraftKings Sportsbook. Boston Celtics to beat the Nuggets plus 370. Nuggets to beat the Boston Celtics plus 390.
Interesting.
Yeah, those are good numbers right there. I'm sure that there's some other stuff out there. Just click around DraftKings. Nobody does it better. Be sure to use Brace as your promo code. Take advantage of that new promotion that they got going around for the NBA playoffs. All right. Anything else from the Phoenix Suns perspective? Everybody, it's just crazy. I get it. When you think about the Sixers, we've been there and done that. And then that's the frustrating part. But, the cliche is there's only one winner. And like, if you were a Phoenix Suns fan, how you feeling right now? You got Kevin Durant, who's one of the greatest shooters to ever play the game. You just got swept. Yeah. You got swept and you had no fight. Like,
yeah,
that's a bad spot right now. Look around the league. There's plenty of spots that you'd be like, man, like, all right, but it's such a fine line of win or go home when it comes to the NBA playoffs, and the cream rises to the top, and clearly Minnesota is that team. Phoenix is not. What do you do if you're Phoenix though? You got to trade, break them up, run it back. What do you got?
There's really not a lot of options that they have. That, like, we talked a lot about this new salary cap, the new CBA that is making things more difficult. Under those new rules, they cannot package any of these players in a trade, meaning it just has to be for those. So, for example, you can't combine a $20 million salary and a $10 million salary to get to 30. You have to be individual players. They also they don't have the mid-level exception. They can only sign guys on veterans minimums. And of course, there will be guys that want to play with Devin Booker and Kevin Durant, but like, you're not in a great spot from a bargaining position, that you essentially are banking on these veterans to come out. I do think that you have to explore these trade conversations, but a guy like Bradley Beal, who is kind of the elephant in the room here, that's due over $150 million over the next 3 years. Like, there's only so many moves that you can make, and it feels like the Suns used all theirs already. That there is no way to backtrack. This is your chips in the middle push to make a true championship contender, and you just got completely outclassed in the first round by a team that is very good, but not quite the caliber that you should be comfortable with beating you to the extent that they did. So it's a tough spot. I don't fully have a real idea of where they go. I know Devin Booker is kind of the guy, so I feel like Kevin Durant's kind of the first name that you have to look at that you can actually get return for, because Bradley Beal, I think there's no chance you can get plus value on, like zero. You're going to have to attach picks, and they really don't even have that. So, yeah, they're not in a good spot any way you really look at it. The bottom line is I think they kind of have to try and retool, find some veterans minimum, and try again next year, but I don't think that's a route for success either.
Yeah, they're in some trouble. And again, you're looking at a team that's going home that just got swept. Could be worse. And I know Sixers fans don't want to hear that, but that's the reality that I was thinking about yesterday. All right. And then of course, man, Milwaukee's just bitten by the injury bug, and that's not an excuse. I'm they're not smart. Like Portis getting thrown out yesterday is ridiculous, but they don't have Dame. They didn't have Giannis. At that point in time, it was going to be tough sledding for them to win this series against the Indiana Pacers. Odds makers told you that much, evened it. I was still leaning towards Milwaukee because how much everybody was on the Pacers. But it seems like everybody's on the Pacers for the right reasons. And now that series is 3-1 as well. And it looks like Milwaukee will be going home with Doc Rivers as the head coach.
Yep, and I think that would have been the case even if Dame and Giannis were healthy. I'm frustrated that there is that excuse handed to Doc Rivers, and of course, it is more difficult to win without your top 2 players. I'm, not dismissing that by any means, but I think this team's been leaking oil since Doc Rivers took over. Again, they were 17-19 in the games that he coached. Tough to do with that level of talent. So shout out to this Pacers team. They're punishing them in the way that they should. They have looked like the better team from pretty much start to finish in that series, with the only exception that being a couple Dame Lillard stretches of him having a heater. So I do think the Pacers take care of business and close the door on this. But yeah, not a good look for Doc Rivers and company over there.
All right, let's go ahead and close up shop. 3 games tonight. We'll see if we can find a winner. DraftKings Sportsbook, where we're getting the odds from. Boston Celtics and Miami Heat, Game 4 in Miami. Celtics lost Game 2, returned serve in Miami, absolutely blew the doors off them, as they should. Back to 10.5-point favorites in Game 4. Does Miami show some fight in your mind? 203.5.
I think they do. I don't know if they're capable of getting another win, but I do like that plus 10.5 here. That this Miami team, they're just unafraid. We've seen the adjustment by Eric Spoelstra that they're just going to launch 3-pointers and attempt to hope somebody gets hot and basically score at a pace that the Celtics can't match and still continue to do their defensive tendencies to keep them under wraps. I think this game stays close, that there is some fight in this Heat team. They're not going to roll over. So give me a plus 10.5 there.
Rolling with the points, taking the Miami Heat. All right, next game up, 8:40 p.m. OKC and the New Orleans Pelicans, 5-point spread, 207. OKC has found that extra gear. There's no way that I'm giving you the Pelicans in this spot. OKC has been free money the last 2 games. Where you at, Sean?
I'm leaning the other way. I think I might go head to head that I think the Pelicans win outright here. That
Fire up the cut app. Fire it up.
Let's do it. That I do think that these 2 teams are closer than 3-0 deficit indicate. OKC has absolutely turned it on, but they've also let this Pelican teams hang around during portions of this game. They will have the home fans behind them. I think it's a gentleman's sweep situation where the Pelicans do steal one here to push it to 3-1, and then I don't give them any chance of actually coming back in the series. But in a 1-game sample size, I do think New Orleans is good enough to win a game.
All right. We'll go head to head on that one. And then finally, 10 p.m., Lakers and Nuggets, game being played in Denver, Game 5, 3-1 series right now. Any shot LeBron and the Lakers make things interesting, and, of course, help the Minnesota Timberwolves a little bit more. That's a big spot for them. But Nuggets, 7-point favorites, 217 is your total tonight.
Yeah, I think the gentleman's sweep is completed in this one. That I don't think the Lakers can catch lightning in a bottle again. They've thrown their best punches in this series. That this has not been the Lakers really underperforming. It's just straight up that the Nuggets are the better team, and I do think they proved that tonight. Put it away pretty comfortably, and I think we get one of those games where Denver just gets to an offensive level that can't be stopped and run away with this one.
All right, great stuff, Sean Barnard. Enjoy the games this evening. Hopefully, get a winner. Give us one play. What's your one play?
I'll roll with I'll go Heat plus 10.5 as my one play. I'll lock in there.
My one play is OKC. OKC, just too good, and from all over too. Just really fun team to watch. Yeah, Pelicans should show some fight, but they're not getting production from CJ McCollum or it's Valanciunas, and that's it, right? Like that's.
Another reason for my optimism, I thought Ingram found something in that last game of getting to his mid-range spots in a little bit. They need him. That has to continue. I do think that's something that could be a little sustainable where they lean on that more than they have to this point.
Yeah, I mean, they got absolutely boat raced in the last 2 games, 106-85 and then 124-92. And CJ McCollum and Brandon Ingram are the 2 guys that they need more than others and just have not been able to deliver. But we'll see what happens tonight, and it's going to be fun games to watch, that's for sure. All right, we'll be back tomorrow. Brand new daily ticket, brand new picks and roll. Of course, we will be live for the funeral and inside the Duncan Lounge, 7:30, Game 5. Everybody enjoy the games. We'll talk to you.